You know what gets me every time is the fact that there are people in this world who have absolutely no problem with being rude, with being inconsiderate, with being controlling, with being harmful. They almost put forth those behaviors and display very toxic attitudes in a way that says, I'm allowed to be this way because my mind and my heart says I'm allowed to be this way. The reality of people like this is that they have an inner core that is turned completely away from anything that is authentic, anything that is loving and wonderful, anything that is pure and good. And they allow the ugly sides of life to penetrate their soul in a way that creates over time a person whose mind is completely turned away from any kind of guilt, having a bothered conscience. There's no ability to stand and say, I'm wrong. All they do is continue the pattern day after day. You know, sometimes I'm sitting in traffic, very rarely, but when I am sitting in traffic, I get a chance to psychoanalyze drivers, their attitudes, their disposition, their character sometimes, and the behavior and the character of some drivers is a study in and of itself. Not only do some people get in front of you or behind you with an attitude of, I need to get over, move, but sometimes they don't use a signal. Sometimes they lay on their horn to force you to do what they want you to do to help them, right? Sometimes they ride your bumper. Sometimes they become, this angry, distracting, kind of a foolish driver that could kill everyone, including themselves. Their ability to manage their emotions is completely gone. There's an inability to capture the moment as a time of need for everyone, right? Everybody's in this traffic, not just me. My bogarting and pushing and acting rude and disrespectful harms other people, but then it also harms me. And the consequence of this behavior can then cause the police to be called on me, my license revoked for reckless driving. I can get into a car accident and kill myself or somebody else, right? And so a lot of people who have this attitude of entitlement, this disposition of callousness and rudeness, they tend to be really terrible people at the end of the day. Nobody wants to regard anybody as a terrible person, but when this kind of behavior is exhibited and the ability to control behavior has been thrown out the window, right? Not having a conscience, ignoring your conscience, not having guilt, ignoring feelings of guilt, looking for validation that you are correct is all a problem, right? And so psychology regards these people most of the time as sociopaths, psychopaths, dark empaths, right? Sadistic people. These are people who have something that a lot of you may not have ever heard, and that's moral disengagement. Albert Bandura was studying behavior many, many years ago, and he wanted to understand what causes certain types of behavior. And within your family, within your relationship, right, within your place of work where you have to be around people, it's possible that you've stood back and you've looked and you've said, why are they doing this? Moral disengagement is basically the idea and the attitude in people who lack empathy that ethics do not belong to me, that those box of values and morals and ethics go over there to somebody else because I'm over here in my own world and I'm doing what I think I need to do for me. And so therefore, I don't need morals. I don't need values. I don't need ethics. They don't apply to me. I'm disengaging from the whole idea of rules, regulations, morals, values, ethics. I am disengaging. Why? Because rules don't apply to me. And there may be a series of events that can cause somebody to feel this way, right? A series of events could include not being raised correctly and not being told no, not being properly disciplined, right? Getting out of juvenile detention early, or, getting out the next day and not having to serve time for something that has been done. Getting into car accidents, one after the other. Getting DUIs and never being held accountable, right? Getting into situations with family members who never hold you accountable. You in general, not you. But these are examples, right, of things that can cause a person to say, you know what, morals, ethics, and values do not belong to me. Moral disengagement. Now, there are situations where these kind of individuals, which I'm going to be referring to them as terrible people, because they're all about themselves. They're all about themselves, and they will harm you. They may even kill you. There's a possibility. There's also a possibility that as parents, they have left you all alone in this big old cold world. So those are terrible parents, right? They kind of left you. These kind of people, there's an inflexibility to their nature. They're not going to bend. They're not going to try. They're not going to become flexible to help you, to love you, to provide some kind of comfort to you. That's not what they're going to do. They are very rigid. They are inflexible. They lack a sense of conformity to social norms. They lack a sense of conformity to social norms. They're going to conform. A social norm would be saying please and thank you. You think they're going to say please and thank you to you? A social norm would be you're a judge, right? And I am trying to get my case heard before you. And yet they're disrespectful to the judge. They're disrespectful to police. They didn't pay their fines, right? They got out of trouble but didn't say thank you. The officer gave them a warning and said, I won't give you a ticket. Never said thank you. Drove off recklessly, If they are seeing a therapist, like me, they schedule an appointment, don't show up. Don't even bother to cancel, right? Or something like you've scheduled an appointment but you have forgotten. So while you're forgetting about your appointment, or while you're forgetting about our meeting, right? Or, our dinner, our lunch, I'm sitting here waiting on you. And so what does that say about you? Having me wait on you. I'm here for my part of this situation, but you're not, right? Having a situation where a parent doesn't come to your rescue. I'm crying, I'm damaged, I'm in pain, I'm confused, but nobody is there to rescue me. That's a parent. Mom sits over there and looks at me with 12 eyes like I'm crazy. Dad sits over there and looks at me and says everything will be okay, but no one's coming over to hug me. These are all things that are ugly. And sometimes they are honest human error, right? We can't always make appointments on time. Sometimes we do forget. Sometimes parents forget to reach out to their kids and give them that physical affection. But other times it is just a mirror of what really is in the heart, in the soul, and in the mind. Something known as theory of mind. Theory of mind, we call it TOM. Theory of mind is basically the experience of being empathic. It's having the neurological and emotional ability to be empathic, to say that I understand the shoes that you're standing in. I may not have gone through it, but I understand what you are dealing with. I may not be experiencing this intense pain right now, but I understand what it may feel like to go through it as you are. So a lot of these individuals do not have theory of mind. They don't care to. They have a lot of what's called risk aversion. And what that means is this, that I want to avoid any kind of risk that is going to put me in a vulnerable position. I want to avoid any kind of risk that's going to require something from me that I don't have. So I'm going to act like nothing is happening all around me. I'm going to ignore your tears. I'm going to minimize your heartache. I'm going to look over there when you want to talk to me on the phone. I'm going to act like you don't exist perhaps and go no contact with you, because I don't want to be in a situation where I am unable to stand on my own 2 feet. And so if there's a risk aversion, or they're avoiding risks, right? They're not going to be available to you. That's the last thing they're going to be. Why would they be available emotionally to you when they're trying to avoid that? And so these are terrible human beings. Now, there are some people who say there's no such thing as a terrible human being because we all make mistakes and we're all imperfect and, boom, You know, that kind of ideology. And I totally get that. And I do agree that that is a possibility in most cases. I think that's a possibility for most human beings. But we can't say that everybody is like this, right? We have good people, we have evil people. We have people who are a little bit more evil and dark and just problematic on this earth than other people. You know what I noticed? Maybe a dark empath. I don't know what to think of that right now. And so that's a true possibility. I get that. But then there are some people who are just evil, right? And there's no other way to look at that. They are terrible. So, sadism, I think I'm going to mention that. Sadism is in here as well. It's really like this pleasure derived from others' pain. We might as well throw this in here as well. Psychological entitlement seems to be the problem of most sadistic individuals. And that can go into psychological entitlement. I deserve special treatment. I deserve to get what I want. I deserve to have A, B, and C. You know, everything belongs to me. Whether they verbalize it or not, their attitude could tell you, right? And some of the things that they say. These kind of people are tricky. Imagine growing up in a household with these kind of terrible human beings. So if you feel like you've seen this kind of disposition and attitude before, stay tuned because you want to keep watching. All right, guys, let's get into this conversation, my Lord. You know, I looked over a little bit of the research on these kind of personalities, and one thing I saw was a strong correlation between psychological entitlement and idealistic fanaticism. And it's this kind of fanatical way of thinking about things and other people in life, and then having these ideologies, you know. And that could be a political ideology, it could be a racial ideology, it could be a spiritual one, but they tend to be idealistic, meaning that there's no real grounding and foundation and truth to it, you know, and they become fanatics. You know, it's like they, you know, think about the religious fanatics that you know, they tend to have this, I'm not going to conform to the ways of the world, you know, that this is the way God wants me to be and that's all there is to it. If I'm going to take people's money and molest children and harm people and lie to them, that's what I'm going to do because I have no true theory of mind. I am completely disengaged from morals. And you find some of it in religious and political realms, sometimes in your relationships, right? Family, romance, and sometimes you see it right in the law system, right? The legal system, I should say. And it's a very scary reality, right? You're probably wanting to know what are some of the common symptoms. Well, let's go ahead and jump into that. Egotism and callousness. That is basically a personality trait that can impact a person's ability to be humble, modest, to learn, to be worthy of forgiveness, right? Because once that individual is egotistical and callous and they kind of invade your space in your world without any conscience, then, you know, they really are kind of evil in that sense. In these kind of individuals, you may find something known as ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism. And here's what that means. That means that I feel like my race, my culture is better than yours. And so I'm up here, you're down here. And so you're going to serve me. And you're going to bend. You're going to skip. You're going to flip. You're going to do some cartwheels. You're going to sing, right? And dance. Ethnocentrism is kind of like this idea or mindset of one particular culture as being the good one, powerful, important, the list goes on. And that is an incorrect way to think of things, right? But these kind of individuals do think this way. False ideologies, spitefulness, okay? Cognitive bias. You know, I have a cognitive bias in the sense that I believe that all people who ride motorcycles and have tattoos are unstable. They need therapy. They need help. And that's just the way I believe. A client said that just like that to me one day. There's also an identity crisis that they go through over time. They don't know who they are. They feel like they don't know who they are. They feel unloved and uncared for. They feel made fun of or not taken seriously. They have low self-esteem. They often have trauma from now or in the past. Their family members have distanced themselves from them. right? And they often have a lot of legal issues. So they have an identity crisis. They don't feel that there's a need for an apology. They're not accountable. They don't have a conscience. You're not important enough for accountability, excuse me. And so they just do any and everything they can do to avoid an apology. You know, they're demanding. It's my way or the highway. My way or the highway. Some research in this area has suggested that there may be something known as everyday sadistic behavior or everyday sadism. And basically what that means is this, is that little things that you see human beings do can add up at the end of the day to be sadistic. And there may be what we call subclinical features, you know. You're not quite at that point of being diagnosed, but you're like, you know, what do they call it? A thin hair away from, you know, being titled a sadistic person. That's a scary thing, right? Because, you know, here we are in our everyday life trying to get laundry done, eat, care for those we love, go to work, come back home, have some time off, right? And it's really hard to do that if you feel that everybody is going to be out to get you, or there's somebody out there who's sadistic, who is out to get you. And you need to be watchful of them. Let me also say that these kind of individuals, you know, they display a deeper issue when they are grandiose. You know, giving a grandiose presentation of the self says there's a deeper issue going on at the core of who I am. And I'm either trying to intentionally cover that, or I don't see my flaws and I'm way too arrogant. And so either way is wrong. Right? So a grandiose presentation in these terrible personality traits or terrible mindsets that people can develop over time is awful, right? There's a distortion often of consequences. They are not going to look at consequences as the direct result of their negative behavior. And they're going to walk away possibly in volatility, right? They tend to be very volatile and hostile and angry. And they're going to see to it that you take that back, that they are responsible for something, that they need to pay for something. Who are you to say that I'm responsible for something, right? Who are you to say that I must own up to this mistake you say that I engaged in, right? And so that egotistical, grandiose sense of self and attitude puts them in the mindset that they don't deserve a consequence at all. And you are the only one who's worthy of punishment, right? So there's a major skewing of and distortion of consequences. So how does this bother you? Well, in a lot of ways. I'll put it that way. In a lot of ways. Oh my goodness. If you have a parent like this, it's traumatizing. If you have a sibling like this, it's even more traumatizing, right? Because there's going to be competition over time. There's going to be a lot of hostility and anger at the core of the relationship. There's often trouble with realignment to life. When you live in a world where there's people like this and you come across them every day, or you have a family like this, a relationship like this, it's really easy to lose your focus. And when you lose your focus, you lose your grip, right? That grip that we have on life every day. We know what we're doing. We know what we're here to do. We know the next steps we need to take. We know all the meetings and job, related things that we have to do today. We know our family and what they need, right? So we have a grip on life. But when you're around somebody like this and you have people like this, right, in your world, you can have trouble with realigning yourself, trouble with getting back up and standing again, right? And sometimes that person, that terrible person, will knock you back down and watch you sit on the ground. And unfortunately, that's because they're terrible, right? They have a sadistic mindset, a cold, callous disposition, and they're showing you loud and clear. You are often put in a position of defensiveness with these people, Anytime you can go throughout your day, go throughout your life, and you're okay and you get along with people, and then that person enters your space and then you're defensive, that's a cue. Your body and your brain is trying to tell you something is wrong here and you need to be aware of it, right? It's very easy to act like we don't see things in our daily life, but the minute you start feeling defensive, that's a sign. It's a sign, right? And you need to follow that sign. You may also be subjected to their highly destructive behavior. Drinkers, alcoholics, right? Get behind the wheel, drive, wreck, and then blame everybody else. Get their fourth DUI, right? Highly destructive behavior may also be being sexually active with multiple partners, right? Not being mindful that this is your temple, that is your body. You need to care for it and protect it, and be careful with it, right? Not having that is destructive. Not having that mindset is destructive. Approval, praise, and love is conditional. That's something that you may suffer with for a very long time in your life, right? Acceptance, approval, and love is conditional. Living under these kind of parents, siblings, family members, being in a marriage like this, right? You're not going to be able to see that love is unconditional. I love you in spite of. I love you despite of. And sometimes my love comes across as correcting you. Sometimes my love comes across as putting up a boundary. But I love you. I am not loving you on condition. But in these kind of households, love is conditional. You may also find yourself matching their energy over time. You know, you have a family member who's ferocious and volatile and hostile and angry and has a potty mouth. Right? When you're in their company, you know, and you've heard that for so long and repetitively, or, you know, in a fashion that feels like a cycle, then it's going to get digested. It's going to get digested. And you may find yourself displaying some of those similar behaviors and patterns. Another way that you can match their behavior is they're angry, you become angry. They're depressed, you become really depressed, you know. Or you feel like they've really hurt you, but you're going to stand up and match their callous, cold disposition, you know, and you're not going to let emotions take you down. And that can really be a defense that's like way up here. You may also feel imprisoned and trapped, especially if you're in a religiously intolerable family dynamic, right? So you can't tolerate the family dynamic. The family can't tolerate much of anything that's normal and natural, right? And so therefore you're kind of trapped in this religious or political family that just doesn't get it. And that can be really difficult in the end. You may also feel psychoanalyzed, you know. Nobody wants to feel psychoanalyzed under people who don't have morals or under people who don't seem to care. They seem to be cold and callous, you know. Nobody wants to be psychoanalyzed by them, but you may feel psychoanalyzed. And because of that, you may shut completely down, stop talking, walk away, run, the list goes on. And so, you know, it's a terrible dynamic to be in, but a lot of people are there. Stay tuned with me up until Friday and Saturday live, as I'm going to start talking a little bit more about these dynamics coming up here soon. I hope to see you then. Bye-bye.